Liam Carter jolted awake in the middle of the night, heavy breathing, right beside him. He reached for the lamp switch and froze. A beautiful woman sat on the edge of his bed, wearing his shirt, hastily thrown on, hair disheveled, bare feet ice cold. She looked at him, whispered like she was choking. "Please don't panic. I have nowhere else to hide." Liam was about to grab his phone to call the police when she said something that paralyzed him. "If you call them, they'll take me back into the person who tried to kill me tonight." In the trembling yellow lamplight, Liam recognized her face. Eleanor Vale, the powerful, elegant CEO he'd seen on billboards across town. Liam Carter was 34 years old, a single father living with his 7-year-old daughter May in a small wooden house on the edge of town. He worked night shifts as a mechanic at the local garage. The income was enough to survive, but he was always exhausted from juggling work and parenting alone. His home was usually peaceful, always carefully locked because he feared for May's safety. After losing his wife in a car accident 3 years ago, he had become overly cautious about everything. Security cameras, double locks, windows that latch from the inside. Which is why when Eleanor appeared in his bedroom in the middle of the night, his heart nearly stopped. He couldn't understand how she had gotten in. Eleanor was breathing so hard, she looked ready to collapse. The smell of smoke and rain still clung to her skin. Liam saw only a terrified person, trembling so badly her lips shook. No trace of the powerful CEO he'd seen in news clips. He grabbed a sweatshirt and draped it over her shoulders, asking in a low but wary voice, "Who's chasing you?" The question made Eleanor break down crying. Relief mixed with horror, she explained that she had left a board meeting at 10 p.m. and gone down to the parking garage to get her car. The moment her engine started, another vehicle blocked her in. 3 masked men yanked her car door open. She fought, stumbled, left her purse behind, ran into the darkness between parking spaces, managed to hit the emergency stairwell button, and burst out onto street level into freezing rain. No phone, no wallet, no shoes. She had run barefoot for nearly an hour along the highway, following a vague memory toward the neighborhood where her best friend used to live. That house now belonged to Liam. She didn't know that, she just knew it was the only address she could remember. The back door of Liam's house had a loose hinge from when he bought the place. He kept meaning to fix it, but never got around to it. Eleanor had pushed lightly, and it opened. She collapsed into his kitchen, soaking wet and panicking. She saw his shirt hanging on a chair, and put it on because she was too cold to control her shivering. Exhausted, she had stumbled into what turned out to be his bedroom and collapsed there, accidentally startling him when he woke up. Liam listened to everything, his chest torn between sympathy and suspicion. But her eyes were too real, too afraid. This wasn't the look of someone lying. When Liam asked why anyone would want to kill her, Eleanor whispered, "Because I discovered something they wanted buried forever." At that exact moment, May woke up. The little girl opened her bedroom door and saw Eleanor wearing Daddy's shirt. With innocent concern, she asked, "Are you okay? Does something hurt?" The question made Eleanor's throat close up. Liam quickly intervened, telling his daughter that Eleanor was someone who had an accident and needed help. May nodded seriously and brought Eleanor a small blanket embroidered with moons, her favorite blanket. After May returned to her room, Eleanor broke down completely. I haven't felt safe like this in so long. The small blanket, the child's innocent kindness, the way Liam hadn't immediately called the police or thrown her out. It all crashed over her at once. Liam watched her cry silently. He didn't know her, didn't know if her story was true, but he knew what fear looked like. He'd seen it in the mirror after his wife died, when he didn't know how he'd survive raising May alone. "You can stay tonight," he said quietly. "Tomorrow we figure out what's real." Eleanor nodded, clutching the moon blanket like a lifeline. In another room, May whispered to her stuffed animals, "Daddy's helping someone, like Mommy used to." Liam heard it through the thin walls. His throat tightened. His wife had always been the one to help strangers, to see the good in people, to open their home to those in need. Now here he was, with a CEO in his bedroom, wearing his shirt, and his daughter reminding him of the person he used to be before grief made him cautious. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens next. The next morning, Liam was about to take May to school when Eleanor insisted on leaving. She didn't want to cause more trouble. But Liam had a bad feeling. When they opened the front door, a black SUV blocked the driveway. Three men in dark suits approached like they'd been lying in wait. Eleanor immediately backed up, trembling. The leader raised his voice loud enough for neighbors to hear. "We have orders to bring Miss Eleanor back to headquarters for investigation into charges of embezzlement and fabricated disappearance." The accusations made curious neighbors step out onto their porches. Eleanor shook her head, voice breaking. "No, they're setting me up. They want to silence me." One of the men pointed at Liam. "You're harboring a fugitive. With your income level, you can't afford the legal fees this will cost you." The entire neighborhood's eyes focused on him, a poor single dad being painted as either a fool or an accomplice. Liam stepped in front of Eleanor, speaking clearly. "Do you have a legal arrest warrant?" They were silent for several seconds, then answered, "We don't need one. She falls under corporate jurisdiction." "Corporate jurisdiction doesn't supersede law enforcement," Liam said evenly. "So either show me a warrant or get off my property." One of them moved to grab Eleanor's arm. May screamed in fear. Liam pulled Eleanor back instinctively. The man sneered, "You want to lose custody of your kid?" The crowd began whispering. Classic poor person making stupid choices, getting involved in stuff way over his head. Why would he help a CEO? Eleanor saw Liam being humiliated because of her. Her eyes filled with guilt and desperation. The man pulled out his phone, preparing to record Liam assaulting corporate security personnel to fabricate additional charges. Liam did something no one expected. He grabbed the phone and threw it to the ground, crushed it under his boot. The neighborhood went silent. This wasn't the behavior of a weak, frightened man. The suited men looked genuinely surprised. One of them threatened, "You'll pay for this." The SUV pulled away, but they didn't leave completely, just retreated far enough to continue surveillance. Eleanor collapsed against Liam's shoulder, crying, I don't want to drag you and your daughter into this danger." Liam's voice was firm. "Unless you can leave here safely, I'm not handing you over to them." May tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, why are those men so mean?" "Because sometimes bad people wear nice suits," Liam answered, "and good people need to stand up to them anyway." An older neighbor, Mrs. Chen, approached cautiously. She had known Liam since he moved here with his wife years ago, watched him transform from a happy husband to a grieving widower to a struggling single father. "Liam, are you sure about this? You could lose everything." "I already lost everything once," Liam said quietly, thinking of his wife. "I know what matters now." Mrs. Chen studied his face. "Your wife would be proud, but she'd also want you to be careful, for May's sake." "I'm being as careful as I can be while still being decent." Another neighbor called out from across the street. "Liam, man, just hand her over. It's not worth the trouble." "That's exactly the problem," Liam called back. "Too many people think decency isn't worth trouble." He turned and walked back inside, leaving the neighbors murmuring among themselves. Some sympathetic, most skeptical, all convinced he was making a terrible mistake. Inside the house, Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking around a cup of tea May had insisted on making for her. The little girl had used far too much sugar, but Eleanor drank it anyway, grateful for the sweetness and the kindness. "Why are you helping me?" Eleanor asked. "You don't even know me." "My wife used to say the exact moment you need help most is when you are least able to ask for it properly. So I learned not to wait for perfect circumstances." Eleanor's eyes welled up again. "Your wife sounds like she was an incredible person." "She was, and she'd have done the same thing I'm doing now." May climbed onto the chair next to Eleanor. "Are you going to be my friend?" Eleanor smiled through tears. "I'd like that very much." Outside, one of the men in the SUV made a phone call. "Sir, the target is still at the location. The homeowner is uncooperative, more aggressive than anticipated." The voice on the other end was cold. "Then make him cooperative. People like him break easily when their children are involved." The man hung up, looked at his colleagues. "We escalate tonight." As evening approached, Liam moved through the house checking locks and windows. He grabbed a baseball bat from the garage and set it by the door. Eleanor noticed. "You're preparing for them to come back." "I'm preparing for whatever happens," Liam corrected. "You could still tell me to leave. Call the police yourself. Say you found me and didn't know who I was." Liam looked at her directly. "Is that what you want?" "I want you and May to be safe." "Then help me understand what's really happening, because I can't protect you from something I don't understand." Eleanor took a breath and began telling him the truth. "Would you have stayed silent or spoken up? Let us know in the comments." Eleanor explained everything. She had discovered a black fund worth hundreds of millions of dollars being used for bribes and stock manipulation. Behind it was Victor Hale, the vice chairman who wanted to remove her and take the CEO position. The night before, during a closed board meeting, she had proposed an immediate audit. 3 hours later, she was ambushed in the parking garage. The timing proved there was an internal accomplice. Liam asked why she hadn't gone public. Eleanor explained, "Without evidence, no one will believe me. I had my laptop in my bag with all the proof, but I dropped it when I ran." Liam thought back. Last night's storm had been heavy. Water from the parking garage would have drained toward the sewer system. If the laptop fell, it might have been carried along the maintenance channels. What Eleanor didn't know was that Liam used to be a senior maintenance engineer for Vail Dynamics before moving to this small town, before his wife died. He had walked away from his career to be present for May. "I know that building," Liam said quietly. "I used to maintain those systems." Eleanor stared at him. "You worked for my company?" "5 years ago, before I needed to be just a dad." He grabbed his keys. "If your laptop went into the drainage system, there are only 3 places it could have gotten caught. I can check them." They brought May to Mrs. Chen's house, then drove to the Vail Dynamics building. Liam led Eleanor to the underground levels, navigating toward the technical maintenance access points. They had to crawl through dark passages, avoiding security cameras. Eleanor was shaking, but Liam moved with surprising confidence. "You really did work here," Eleanor said, watching him navigate without hesitation. "Best job I ever had, until being a father became more important." At the 3rd drainage junction, Liam found it. The laptop completely destroyed by water, but the hard drive was intact. "If this still works, your evidence is here," he said. They brought it to Harper, an old colleague of Liam's who specialized in data recovery. Harper worked for 2 hours, his fingers flying over the keyboard, running recovery programs that most people didn't even know existed. He had been the best data forensics specialist at Vail Dynamics before retiring early. Finally, files appeared on screen. Video footage from the board meeting, Victor signing an order to temporarily detain the CEO. Clear evidence of conspiracy. But there was more. Financial records showing wire transfers to offshore accounts. Email chains discussing eliminating the problem. Photos of Eleanor being followed by private investigators for weeks. A comprehensive plan to discredit her, remove her, and if necessary, make her disappear permanently. "Jesus," Harper whispered. "This isn't just corporate backstabbing. This is organized crime." Victor had already filed a police report claiming Eleanor had embezzled $90 million and was on the run. He'd fabricated bank statements, forged her signature on transfer documents, and paid off accountants to testify against her, meaning anyone harboring her could be charged as an accomplice. "That's why those men came to your house," Harper explained. "They're not just corporate security, they're setting you up as a criminal too. Victor's playing every angle. If Eleanor gets arrested, great. If you get arrested for helping her, even better. It discredits you both." Liam felt his blood run cold. He'd known this was serious, but he hadn't understood the full scope until now. "How do we stop him?" Liam asked. "Federal investigators. This crosses state lines with the wire transfers. That makes it federal jurisdiction. I can upload everything to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Once they see this, they'll move fast." "How fast?" "If I send it now, warrants by morning, arrest by noon tomorrow." "Do it," Liam said without hesitation. At that moment, police sirens wailed outside Harper's workshop. Eleanor panicked. "Liam, because of me, your entire life will be destroyed." Liam gripped her shoulders. His voice was steady. If I let them take you, May will grow up thinking her father abandoned an innocent person. I can't have that. He picked up May from where she'd been sleeping in Harper's back room and motioned for Eleanor to follow. Back door. Now. They ran into the woods behind the workshop, the only direction without police presence. Harper stayed behind, uploading all the evidence to federal servers before wiping his systems. Then he walked outside to misdirect the police, buying them precious time. In the dark forest, Eleanor was gasping from exhaustion. Liam carried her part of the way, May clinging to his neck. "Why are you doing this?" Eleanor asked between breaths. "Because May deserves to learn that doing the right thing matters more than being safe." They reached an abandoned ranger station deep in the woods. Liam had played here as a kid. He knew every trail, every hiding spot. Inside, he started a small fire in the old stone fireplace. May curled up on Eleanor's lap, already half asleep. "We can't hide forever," Eleanor whispered. "We don't have to. Harper sent everything to federal investigators. By morning, the truth will be in the right hands." "What if they don't believe it?" "Then we keep fighting, but we fight together." Eleanor looked at this man who had given up his safety, his home, his stability to protect a stranger. "I don't deserve this." "It's not about deserving, it's about being human." May stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep, "Mommy would be proud of you, Daddy." Liam's eyes glistened. Eleanor saw the pain in his face, the weight he carried, the strength it took to be kind when life had been cruel. "Your wife," Eleanor said softly. "She'd be proud of who you became." "I hope so, because right now I'm terrified I'm going to get all three of us killed." "You won't. You're the bravest person I've ever met." Liam laughed bitterly. "I'm not brave. I'm just a mechanic who can't walk away from someone in trouble." "That's exactly what bravery is." Outside, flashlights swept through the trees, distant voices calling out. The search was expanding. Liam held his daughter closer. "When the sun comes up, we make our move. Federal agents should have the files by then. We just need to survive the night." Eleanor nodded. For the first time in days, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. By morning, everything had changed. Harper's upload had reached a federal task force investigating corporate fraud. They opened an immediate case against Victor Hale. News spread rapidly. CEO Eleanor Vale innocent. Suspected assassination plot under investigation. When local police realized they'd been manipulated by Victor, they reversed course. From pursuers, they became protectors. Operating under federal jurisdiction now. Eleanor was brought to federal headquarters for testimony. Liam and May accompanied her as witnesses. While Eleanor spoke with investigators, Liam overheard office staff whispering, "Isn't that the most innovative CEO of the year? How did she survive all night?" When Eleanor emerged from the interview room, people stood and applauded. For the first time, she received respect, not based on her title, but on her courage to survive. Victor was arrested during an emergency board meeting. Live television cameras caught him trying to flee, being handcuffed in front of shocked executives. Eleanor turned to Liam. "You didn't just save me, you saved my company." A federal spokesperson confirmed to media, "An ordinary citizen risked his life to save a CEO from an assassination plot orchestrated by internal conspirators." Liam blushed when reporters approached. His answer was simple, "I just did what was right." The small-town community that had judged him harshly now reversed completely. Neighbors who had whispered about him came to apologize for their hasty judgments. Mr. Patterson from 3 houses down brought over a casserole. "I'm sorry, Liam. I should have known you better than that." The teacher from May's school sent flowers with a note, teaching our children to be brave by example. Even the local newspaper ran a story. Local hero protects CEO from corporate assassins. Liam hated the headline but appreciated the sentiment. Social media exploded with support. Hashtag Justice for Eleanor and Protect the Protector trended nationally. People shared stories of times they'd been judged unfairly, times someone had helped them when they were desperate, times the system had failed them until one person stood up. May's classmates thought her dad was super cool now. She came home from school bursting with pride, telling Eleanor, "Everyone wants to meet you. They said you were like a princess and Daddy's like a knight." Eleanor laughed, the first real laugh she'd had in months. "Your daddy is definitely a knight, the best kind, the kind who doesn't need armor to be brave." May hugged Eleanor in the crowd. "You don't have to leave now, right?" Eleanor laughed through tears. "I don't want to leave." Veil Dynamics held a new press conference. Eleanor stepped onto the stage, looked at all her employees and said, "Real heroes don't wear expensive suits or sit in corner offices. Sometimes they're just a father trying to protect his daughter and doing the right thing along the way." She invited Liam onto the stage. Everyone stood, applause longer and more genuine this time. Eleanor announced a complete restructuring of company leadership, ending the old power structures and establishing a fund to protect whistleblowers who exposed wrongdoing. She looked at Liam in that final moment, her heart beating in a way she hadn't expected. Her world had changed, and this man was the anchor point that made everything else possible. Mrs. Chen approached Liam afterward. "I doubted you, I'm sorry. You were scared for me, that's normal. But you weren't scared. I was terrified, I just didn't let terror make my decisions." May tugged on Eleanor's hand. "Can you come to dinner at our house tonight?" Eleanor knelt down. "I'd love that more than anything." That evening, as Eleanor helped May set the table in their small wooden house, Liam watched from the kitchen doorway. Two people who had been strangers 3 days ago now moved around his home like family. "Thank you," Eleanor said when she caught him watching. "For what?" "For seeing me as a person instead of a title. For protecting me when you had every reason not to. For teaching your daughter that kindness matters." "You're welcome, but I think you taught me something too." "What's that?" "That being cautious and being brave aren't opposites. You can be scared and still do the right thing." Eleanor smiled. "We make a good team." May brought over a drawing she'd made. 3 stick figures holding hands. "That's our family now," she announced confidently. Liam and Eleanor exchanged glances. Neither corrected her, because maybe, just maybe, she was right. "I'm Liam Carter, and if anyone asks me how that crazy night began, I'll tell them it started with the sound of a woman gasping for breath while running from death. I never thought I'd stand next to a CEO on a press conference stage. Never imagined I'd carry her through a forest in the middle of the night. But there are moments when you can't look away, and I chose to stay." May loves Eleanor like she'd love a mother. Watching them bake cookies together in our kitchen makes my heart soft in ways I can't describe. Eleanor moved out of her massive penthouse to live temporarily near us. She said the pressure of power had been suffocating. One evening, while I was finally fixing that back door hinge, the one that led her into my house that night, she stood beside me and whispered, "That door opened up my new life." I didn't know how to respond, just knew my heart was beating faster than was probably safe. She asked if I was afraid to stay close to her, since she still didn't know how everything would turn out. I said, "I just need to know you won't have to run through the rain alone again." Eleanor placed her hand over mine, a small gesture that changed everything between us. I don't know what the future holds, but I know the three of us, Misawami, May, and Eleanor, have been through the worst together. And sometimes the people who enter your life during your darkest moments are exactly the reason your life gets brighter. I didn't save her. We saved each other. That's the story I want to tell. Not about power, but about kindness. A week later, Eleanor made an offer. Come back to Veil Dynamics, not as a mechanic, as director of safety and ethics. Help me rebuild the culture. I don't know if I'm qualified. You're the most qualified person I know. You understand what matters. I thought about it, about May, about the life we'd built in this small town, about the man I'd become after loss. Can I work part-time? I still need to be there when May gets home from school. Eleanor smiled. We'll build your schedule around her. Family first. Always. That night, May asked me, is Eleanor going to be my new mom? The question hit me harder than I expected. I knelt down to her level, looked into those innocent eyes that saw the world so simply. Would you want that? Yes, she makes you smile like you used to before mommy died. Children see things adults try to hide. They noticed the small changes, the way I hummed while making breakfast now, the way I didn't look so tired all the time, the way the house felt warm again instead of just functional. Let's take it slow, okay? But yes, I think she might become part of our family. Good. I already told her she could have the room with the window. I laughed, surprised and touched. My daughter, the architect of our future. That evening, Eleanor and I sat on the porch after May went to bed. The night was quiet, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for days. Thank you, she said again. You keep thanking me. You don't have to. I do, though. You gave me more than shelter. You gave me back my faith in people, in goodness, in the idea that someone could help without wanting something in return. I was quiet for a moment. My wife used to say that kindness is never wasted. Even when it seems like it doesn't matter, it matters to the person receiving it, and it matters to your soul. She was wise. She was, and I'm trying to live in a way that would make her proud. Eleanor reached over and took my hand. She would be incredibly proud. You've raised an amazing daughter. You've kept your heart open after loss. You've stayed decent in a world that doesn't always reward decency. That's extraordinary. I don't feel extraordinary. I feel like I'm just trying. That's what makes it extraordinary. We sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching fireflies appear in the darkening yard. May's face appeared briefly in her bedroom window, peeking out to check on us, then disappearing with what I imagined was a satisfied smile. Eleanor and I haven't defined what we are yet. More than friends, not quite partners, something in between that's growing naturally, without force, without pressure, just two broken people slowly becoming whole again in each other's presence. But I know this. When I wake up now, I'm not afraid of finding someone unexpected in my house. Because sometimes the unexpected is exactly what you needed all along. The broken hinge is fixed now, but I kept the old screws in a jar. A reminder that sometimes broken things lead to beautiful beginnings. And if you believe in stories like ours, stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things for each other, then you're the kind of person who makes the world worth protecting. That's all I have to say. Be the person who doesn't walk away. Even when it's scary, especially when it's scary, because you never know whose life you might save or whose life might save yours. The people who enter your life during chaos aren't accidents. They're exactly who you needed to meet. Be the person who offers shelter when someone is running through the rain. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Strong Dad Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.